What up chaps, I'm Magical Mike, and it's that time of year once again where I round up the things that happened previously on the channel and look ahead to see what's planned next. And if you like this kind of content, I do one of them every year, so please do hit the like button and let me know in the comments as well. It's a good way to get a roundup on what's happened over the last year. Well, it's safe to say that 2020 was not a great year. I don't think it takes a genius to come up with that gigabrain hot take, what with the whole global pandemic from COVID and all that. I think it's worth making mention of it just for historical sake when I myself look back on these videos in the future, but there's really not much more I should say about that. Everyone's struggled with it in one way or another, but it seems that YouTube creators and Twitch streamers have seen a bit of a silver lining to it all, with so many people being stuck at home and consuming a lot more content. Gotta take whatever you can get, right? And even I've seen a tiny growth on this channel too, for the first time in ages, which is pretty nice, and probably the only time that you can say that about a growth, unless you're a botanist, maybe? Anyway, considering that, I really flopped very hard on videos and streams in 2020, completely failing to deliver on a lot of things that I wanted to do. So let's talk about last year's plans first. Streaming and uploading the VODs to the channel, I don't have any plans to change here. If I do full playthroughs of games that I want to share on YouTube, then I'll just do it. I know not everyone wants hugely long videos in their feed, but, you know, tough. And as usual, random one-offs and casual things won't be uploaded anyway because of a lack of context. I really fell short on Twitch this year though. I wanted to stream more, but I never felt like actually committing to doing something. I've honestly struggled with that whole thing all year. Summer, as always, is a no-go time for me to do anything, but then more and more, winter is completely getting the best of me mentally as well, which doesn't leave much time in between during the year where I'm actually feeling confident and up to trying to be fun on video. So while I wanted to, I barely managed anything. And the planned Baldur's Gate playthrough that I was hinting at all of last year never even started. I do think, however, that might be a blessing in disguise. Since the Baldur's Gate games are so text heavy, I didn't fancy reading all of that out and destroying the pace like I did for Pathfinder Kingmaker. I want to truly enjoy the Baldur's Gate series, and trying to put effort into making them entertaining to watch would be at risk of making me not want to continue playing them in the first place. So I'm cancelling the whole idea of streaming them at all. Really, I was just interested to see what a few friends would make of my experiences with them, Wastica if you're listening then, eh? And a few other people, but nah, I've modded a game up with the NPC project and some quality of life stuff, like companions not killing each other and leaving the party, and I'm just going to enjoy my sorcerer character off stream. I might do some kind of video on it once I finish, but no promises. I did mention a few other games to maybe stream in 2020, and even older suggestions that I've had too, like the original Spyro trilogy for example. I took so long to decide to actually do that though, that the remaster came out in those years and eventually went on sale to a point where I actually wanted to buy it, and only now am I just getting around to playing that for the first time for myself, and frankly I just want to enjoy that casually too. I'm probably using footage from that right now in fact. It's not like the Crash Insane streams did super well, so I don't think we're really missing out on first impressions of Spyro and what that's all like, and there's no nostalgia there either because it's my first impressions. It's just a set of classically fun platformers and collectathon games that are well remade as far as I can tell. Currently I'm going through Spyro 2, but I think the footage is Spyro 1. Half-Life 2 with M-Mod was mentioned, and I did actually get round to doing that. Personally, I really loved the changes that the mod added to the gun's feel and feedback. Various graphical and mechanical enhancements added by M-Mod were just a bunch of fun to play around with, and I didn't think that the shotgun could possibly feel any better, but I was wrong. It is a glorious weapon, made better by the mod. The streams though did absolutely awful. I don't think a single person said a single word in chat the whole time, and man, did I feel that. It felt harder and harder every time I looked over and saw nothing in chat, and I had nothing in particular to say about the game as it went on. I did have plenty to say about the first half of the game though. The start is so full of what I think is genuinely good commentary, and sometimes even good gameplay, shockingly. All of the chapters leading to Ravenholm and just beyond to about Nova Prospect are my favourite parts of the game, and I'm fairly knowledgeable about what went into that stuff, so I can talk for quite a while about it, but then after that I forgot how much the city sections tend to absolutely drag on, in my opinion. I know a lot of people like those, but nah, not for me. So the last couple of parts were not the best, and I just want it to be done, quite frankly. I don't know if it really shows in the commentary, but I fear that it probably does. I also didn't want to abandon the playthrough midway, so it just kind of, you know. It was rough, and it's probably what caused me to change my perceptions and plans going forward with streams. I'd still recommend Mmod if you're interested, but perhaps maybe not those VODs. Dark Souls 2 was only a vague suggestion, but it didn't happen. Nothing really to say here, I just didn't stream enough to ever get to do anything, but I would like to revisit that game in the future. All 6 Master Chief Collection Halo games finally released on PC as well, and I said that I might do those on stream too when they were all out, but I don't really feel like it at this point for reasons that I'll talk about in a while. The second to last full playthrough I did was a Star Wars game. It was Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. It's far too long of a title for a game. I first saw this game back in 2016 on Mike's channel and wanted to play it myself back then, so it took 4 years or so to get round to it. A few problems with this one, since Star Wars music is heavily copyrighted and policed, and it's so easy to detect since John Williams' soundtrack is one of the most recognisable in the world, so I'm sure those VODs are muted to hell, and with the whole DMCA farce going on with Twitch this year, I'm surprised I haven't had to delete them. On YouTube, they are blocked in some countries, and I can't run ads on them, but not a big deal for me, but at least the music does survive, and it really does improve the game massively, so it is a shame to lose that stuff. I loved this game, and the streams were fun to do too, despite some confusing level design and me getting lost a whole bunch. Still would recommend. The only other thing I did on stream was a one-off. It was Skyrim, but I only followed the main quest marker. This was a semi-challenge-ish thing. My rules were simple: beat the main quest and just see how long it takes for a pretty average run, without going out of my way to do any side content whatsoever. So more of an experiment than a challenge, I would say. Now this was a modded run, so it might not be fully perfect as like a proper experiment, but it really wasn't supposed to be. I was just kind of curious. I played a Dark Elf that used heavy armour, since it was the most armour value for the least perk investment, since I wasn't going to be levelling up too much. I also used Conjuration, since spawning allies that scaled in strength with the difficulty was a no-brainer, and the Conjured Sword is a strong weapon that wasn't reliant on random loot. I did end up getting quite lucky with some heavy frost resistance iron boots early on, and combined with Dunmer fire resistance, that set me up for most of the tougher fights against elemental things and dragons and magic users throughout the whole rest of the game. So yeah, I was using iron boots against Alduin, kinda silly. Unsurprisingly, it does turn out that the game is very easy, right up until the final dungeon, where the enemies seem to be much higher levels than I was, which I think I was about level 13-ish, I think I finished the game. Anyway, that was very weak going into the end game, and I struggled a lot in Skuldafn, and I could have just ran past everything, but that kind of wasn't the point. I wanted to play it like a normal player would, not a speedrunner. And as such, the final result was a rough 7-hour-ish run of the game. So no, not a speedrun, not even close, just a follow the marker very brainlessly run. And I cannot at all recommend such a playstyle to anyone, because man, that was the most boring way I could have ever played Skyrim. To reduce it to such a basic, simplistic and single-minded focus absolutely ruined the whole point of an open world game like Skyrim. Do not do it. I will never be able to understand players that actually do play like that, and that was part of the experiment, was to just see what it's like, and I didn't like it. Oh well. So that was that for streaming. I did want to do more, but I ended up not doing much at all. Again, oh well. I also said that I'd be doing more quids in-game reviews, and that I'd be revising the angle on those. For those of you that haven't seen that series, they're pretty much a standard review of a game, with all the footage gathered from relevant places, showing the best, the worst, and more gameplay loopy parts of the game that I thought were particularly outstanding. They're supposed to be genuinely good reviews, at least I hope. As a result, these are some of the most labour-intensive videos that I get to make, so I also said that I was going to streamline that process somewhat too, since views aren't like incredibly good on them, so it's kind of an opportunity cost thing for me. And well, since I only got 2 of these videos out this year, I haven't yet managed to streamline that process, so I still consider these videos to be of that higher quality, and they are some of my favourites of recent years in that series as well. Firstly, we have Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, a really damn good game that I can't praise enough and still need to get back to my own personal other playthroughs, because I never finished the Malkavian playthrough that I started straight after. And while I like that video, there's not a lot to say about it since I was just happy with it overall, but maybe the low view count on stuff like that is worth mentioning, since that is the reason that I'm going to simplify the series now. Because let's face it, it's not great to put effort into stuff and then feel like the YouTube algorithm just doesn't care enough to share it, especially when you see other videos blowing up about the exact same topic, and even around that same kind of time too. There's something really about it, you know? After that was a combo video for Jedi Outcast that I mentioned a minute ago, and its sequel game, Jedi Academy. I didn't do Academy on stream for all of those music problems that I mentioned, but I did want to continue playing the series immediately after Outcast since that saber combat was so much fun. So I jumped right into the next game and had to include it in a video since these Star Wars games are truly something special when it comes to providing a damn cool lightsaber experience, and they're relatively similar, so they go well together. I tried to include some swagger in the combat footage too, to make it look as good as it feels to play, and hopefully that manages to come through, but that's up to you guys. These are fun games, go watch the video, maybe I'll stream it at some point eventually. Who knows? I don't. Recently in the series continued as planned. I think I said I had a few already written in last year's video, so those did happen. We started out with Grid 2, which was a fairly okay but nothing special racing game. I really liked the first one and was hoping that the sequel would be better, but there's some glaring changes that kind of dragged it down a lot, which is a shame really, because I do enjoy racing games and I'm becoming more interested in the realism or more sim-ish parts of those kind of games, which is why you see a bit of dirt rally footage randomly in videos like this. But Grid 2 just kind of fell short for me. It was okay, and that's really all I had to say about it, hence recently in, not quids in. Pokemon Gaia was a great game, bit of a ROM hack here, so not really the sort of thing that I do normally. I don't think I've much to add than the stuff that I already said in the video for it, but if you're into Pokemon and don't mind emulating stuff, then you should give it a go. I haven't played a Pokemon game since Gen 3, so a lot of the features in this ROM were brilliant quality of life changes, and it's just worth playing if you're into that kind of thing. Go check it out, very easy to Google. Borderlands 1, the original. Well, this was essentially just a rant video in the end. I had reinstalled the game to check if my old perspective on it, being a boring looter shooter, was still grounded in some kind of reality, since everyone loves to look back on that game with rose-tinted glasses. And in the years since it was new, it's aged incredibly poorly, I think, and I went over all of those issues in that video. I did finally get all of the achievements from the stupid Thunderdome DLC since doing that video, so that's nice I guess, but wow, what a waste of time that was. Ooh. Halo Reach, which was an odd one really because it got all of its views within a couple of days, and that doesn't normally happen on this series. It's quite a number for this series as well, to be honest, and that was pleasing to see, but it didn't really translate into much. There's not really a lot of commentary on there. I like Reach, it's a strong Halo game, and I've been back to it even more recently with my friend Xavier to show him the series, Halo that is, and to see if it holds up, and I considered doing just one video for the whole collection, but each game has so much going on and so much worth talking about that they had to be separated. So I also did Halo CE Combat Evolved, which ended up much longer because of the nostalgia factor and it looking a lot older, so I felt like it needed much more explanation and justification for what's going on and why it's so well remembered. I think perhaps a little too much time got spent on that video going over so many details, but hey, I think it's worth it. I just don't expect to do the same for the other games in the series. And finally, but actually coming out before Halo CE, but there wasn't really a good segue into that, was Pathfinder Kingmaker's DLC Beneath the Stolen Lands, which has done really quite well, I think. It's quite a divisive DLC in the Steam reviews for it. It gets a lot of hate for not explaining some of its mechanics, which I can fully understand, but I liked it for different reasons entirely, so it was fun to go over and explain 2 whole team builds and show them off just a little bit in the footage, mainly because I love that kind of technical detail in games, and how complicated the Pathfinder rule set can be allows for quite a lot of discussion to be had. But also because I've seen so many people struggle to make characters work in that game. Next up, we've got some miscellaneous videos that I suggested last year. I finally did the character creation video, why I love that aspect of RPG specifically. I really could talk about systems and mechanics and all that sort of thing in gaming for a rather lengthy amount of time, but I've tried to be specific and more narrow in scope on those scripts of videos like that. The result, I think, is a fairly short video essay on ways in which character creation in a game might be fun, interesting, or different from other games, and why I enjoy all of the many ways that games let you customize things. There's more to come on this series, but it's a slow burn, and it's not like this kind of video essay has exploded for me in popularity, unlike many other people's on YouTube, so we'll get to things like character development, game balance, and maybe specific games and systems eventually. I also did a short contemplation on if achievements changed gaming, which was another video essay talking about the impact of an achievement-based gameplay loop for me, and considering how much it's changed my habits and affected my fun. I especially love this video because it created a lot of conversation in the comments, which is always my primary goal when it comes to talking about games on YouTube, because I like talking to you guys about that stuff and hearing your experiences. That's the fun in it for me. And as such, you guys were all happy to share in this one, so thank you for that. I don't think my opinion, that I'm not entirely keen on achievements sometimes, ruining or threatening to ruin a game, is unpopular. There's been a lot of agreement on that stance. I'm still kind of torn when it comes to them though. While I do love achievement hunting, it's really the kind of thing that interferes with first playthroughs of some games quite a lot. At the moment, for example, I'm playing through Thief 2014, that reboot, and it's absolutely killing the atmosphere knowing that I need to find literally all of the loot, every single piece of it in every level, because frankly it's just so meticulous and particular. Anyway, I enjoyed ruminating on that idea and would like to do that style of content more often, but it's a totally random sphere to break into since I don't come up with video essay ideas very often and they're quite lengthy to write, and often they'll seemingly randomly explode on YouTube every now and then. Which I haven't quite managed to do, which I think is just the algorithm, but who knows. A lot of them that I do see I don't really rate very highly, despite them being a ton more popular than the stuff I do. A lot of the time it's just the length that seems to get them the attention in the first place, and something about that doesn't really sit right with me, because anybody can unskillfully just keep rambling on and on and on with nitpicky analysis. I mean, I know I'm doing it right now, for example, so it's not exactly like super skillful a lot of the time. And that's not to say that all video essays are like that. There's plenty of talented creators. I've subscribed to many, I've found many, I've seen many, I enjoy them, alright? But I've seen more than a few that get a lot of attention for reasons that I don't fully understand. Or maybe I'm just bitter that none of mine have exploded yet. I don't know, probably. There was talk of me expanding the RPG series to specific builds and such, and I did that with Skyrim in 2020. Two videos here, the Elementalist, which was a glass cannon destruction mage, and the Bone Skinner, a heavy tank skeletal army necromancer build. Both of these have done surprisingly well, and I'm fairly pleased about that since I literally have a spreadsheet full of about 40 ideas for builds in it, so the series looks like it has a ton of longevity to it. These are also time-consuming videos to make. While it's easy to grab some footage, it's very slow to do the camera work in getting some of the flavourful or cooler looking shots, or slow motion scenes, and all sorts of things like that. It takes a lot of time to set that stuff up to make it look cool rather than just being generic gameplay. It also takes me an entire playthrough to set those characters up properly too, since I actually play the character legitimately and don't use console commands to just level them up from scratch. Simply because I also want to enjoy the gameplay instead of doing it just for a video. Like, I'm playing the game because I like it, and I'm coming up with these build ideas because I like them. Anyway, the Elementalist is seemingly quite popular for what I consider to be a fairly standard blaster wizard build, but it is nice to see that the more obscure Bone Skinner is also getting views, which lets me know that I can go ahead with some of my ideas and not be quite so disappointed with the results. As modded builds, there's plenty to talk about with each build idea, from looks, to perks, to gear stats and enchantments, quests that you might want to do, roleplay and gameplay suggestions, all of that stuff. And that's all super interesting to me when I watch videos about character builds, I do tend to skip the backstory segment that a lot of channels like to write, simply because it seems quite tedious to be so in-depth about the lore for so many character ideas, and I'm just not that guy. So I opt to not bother including that. You can come up with your own roleplay for my builds. And the next one should be a warrior type that I'm calling the War Chief, using melee and companions to overpower its enemies. And there we go, those are all of the ideas that I'd mentioned last year in last year's video. The only other thing that I did was a series on Halo 3, and I kind of count this as both a full playthrough and a walkthrough, despite skipping all of the cutscenes. There's a full series of 9 videos, one for each level, played on Legendary, it's the highest difficulty unless you count Lasso, solo as a speedrun for the under 3 hours achievement, which is devastating, I believe. The theatre mode had released with Halo 3, I think, and I had the foresight to keep all of those files of me getting that achievement saved, so that I could then record them later on. It's much easier to record through that feature than it is to do it live, while I'm also trying to concentrate on actually doing the speedrun itself, since some of those levels are really bloody hard to do, and I don't want to be splitting and doing, various recording and stopping recording, and oh no, I need to restart that, and that was a 5-second attempt that I need to do over and over again. You see how it gets tedious, right? So if it's pre-recorded and I can just record back over it, way easier for me. And as such, I'm rather proud of the series, since it does actually show a fair bit of real skill from me, which is quite rare to see, but it also gives me plenty to talk about commentary-wise. These videos are all action, go go go, full of tips, tricks and strategy, hugely satisfying to go back and watch them I think, but not highly viewed since I'm not known for Halo content, and I doubt new people are finding my series before somebody is like Naked Eli's, for example. I won't be doing that again for any of the other Halo games before somebody jokingly asks me to do Halo 2. I have already beaten that, there is evidence, and I will not be redoing that. You will never get me to replay Regret on Legendary solo for the speedrun. No sir. Oh, awful mission. So hard. But anyway, this series is the sole reason that I opted not to stream the whole collection at all, which I said I was going to talk about earlier on. There you go, it's because I did Halo 3 and it wasn't highly viewed. Just a few more things to say behind the scenes for 2020, if you'll bear with my housekeeping. I mean, you made it this far, right? There was no clip compilation this year, simply because I barely streamed. If I do more in 2021, then I'll just include the clips from 2020, but there's not enough to make its own video this year, so we didn't. There's been quite a few changes to my editing and post-production work this year, a few features that I'd never considered using before that have been really handy to work out. Normalizing and compressing mass audio, for example, for background music tracks that have wildly different volume levels, using labels to make adding timestamps to videos much easier, and things like that, which I enjoyed learning a lot, but don't often get the chance to flex using those kind of skills, so it's nice to get out and about like that sometimes. Holiday videos were very much missing from the channel, which is hardly worth mentioning. I guess we're just not doing those videos unless I get some good ideas for them in the future now. Personally, I keep finding it really tough to finish games. I've started all sorts of stuff in the past few months, and it's like reading a good book and not wanting it to end, so I just stall really hard towards the end of a game. And that kind of indecision takes a lot of time away from actually progressing with not only playing the games and then finishing them, but then making videos for them too. I'm absolutely adamant on the way I feel guilty about not producing content about games that I'm playing, but I don't like it feeling like a job sometimes when it clearly isn't. I have so many notepad files on my desktop right now full of notes for scripts on so many games right now, and it is piling up rapidly. And on that note, since it feels like a lot of extra effort that can sometimes take away from simply enjoying the video games, I often just want to mind my own business and not feel like I have to express a personality and such, so streaming and all that stuff is gonna have to change when I do get back to it. There's also the question of how much it's worth putting time into specific aspects of the videos too, which is why the quids in videos are gonna be simplified somewhat. Like, how much is it worth collecting very specific footage for every tiny example of what I talk about in one of those reviews? Would people notice that it's just generic background footage? But it takes a ton of extra time to collect that stuff, and, well, for what payoff exactly? These are important questions that I have to consider for opportunity cost, and it's tough to feel guilty about doing a worse job, but I see it all the time in other people's videos and nobody seems to care, so maybe it's just me. Who knows? And a few comments on this video perhaps trying to make me feel better about that stuff isn't really going to be a good sample size for that stuff either, so I'm just going to wing it and see how it goes. And finally, you've managed to stick it out for all this time. What do we expect to happen in 2021? And I'll be honest, of course, because I have no reason not to be, I don't have a solid plan here. And nobody is surprised by that. The whole Baldur's Gate stream falling through thing annoys me quite a lot, and that is entirely on me, but that means that I don't want to make a promise that I can't keep again. So this does affect how I might be tackling things too in the future. I do want to stream again, but I don't want to commit to full playthroughs of games in case they get boring, or in case I feel like I need to make them YouTube viewable content like a Let's Play. However, there are games that I want to share on stream. Discworld 2 is one of those games that I want to do a proper LP for, but I can't promise this year. Dark Souls 2, as I mentioned much earlier, and plenty of other stuff would be nice to share also, again, who knows when. But then there's stuff like Morrowind, which I am using explicitly as an example here because I'd like to play it and share parts of it, but I don't want to be tied to the stream with it, so I'll be playing it offline too. I'm also not going to be reading all of the dialogue out loud. There might be huge amounts of time with absolutely nothing to talk about, nothing to say, and that's just gonna have to be fine, I'm afraid. I'm not the chattiest person IRL, so we'll just see how that goes, and I'd like to take that approach with various games, just turning the stream on for the sake of it, but I don't know when or what for as of right now. Think of them as casually hanging out, not producing a proper show like I have been doing previously, because frankly, it's incredibly difficult to keep up a one-sided conversation when it comes to streaming with a small, non-interactive or often zero audience. Not only does it threaten to ruin a game experience quite often for me, it does take a toll mentally too, and I don't want to have to try hard stuff like that and end up ruining games. I have a lot of recently in scripts on the go right now too, and those will happen. Stuff in the works are 4 more Halo videos, Divinity Original Sin, which might also be a quiz in depending on how well I rate the game, Thief 2014 and Neverwinter Nights 2, and those are just games that I want to talk about right now. There might be more in the year, in fact there probably will be, let's be honest. There might also be less reviewy when I get around to actually writing those videos, and more kind of anecdotal, here's a story about how I beat a section of a game, kind of story videos and whatnot. I don't know, we'll see, we'll just see how that goes. Quids in, as I've said, will simplify for reasons that I've spoken about, and how long they take to make and stuff like that. Currently Final Fantasy VII and Knights of the Old Republic 2 and some other possibilities are on that list. Dirt Rally, I think I've mentioned this a few times now, the original Thief series, Spyro and even Stardew could be some other possibles, but it's too early to tell where those are going to end up, or if they're going to end up. Skyrim builds should also continue. I will make a playlist for them after I do the War Chief, which is the next one. Some quick examples of names for builds to perhaps whet your appetite are the Hellfire Warlock, the Druid, the Lawmaster, Archaeologist, a Kineticist, how about an Inquisitor, and so many others. Like I said, I've got about 40 ideas currently, so many opportunities to get on with that. I'm quite excited for those videos too, but as I've said, it does take an absolute ton of time to make a build, because I play it legit, which takes dozens of hours anyway, and I have to be in a Skyrim mood to play the game in the first place. Obviously, but that's relatively common, I think. I do go back to that game quite often. And finally, I have some working titles for essays. Hardcore versus Casual, and Old Games Are Still Good. I'm not really sure what points I want to make with those yet, but it's just stuff vaguely swimming around in the old noggin that I often think about. Old games still being good is huge for me since I end up playing so many older games on the channel in the first place anyway. I often see so many video titles on YouTube that are just clickbaity, is this game still worth playing in current year? And I just kind of cringe at that because I don't think a lot of games simply go out of style in that way. And I see some creators even manage to do a video like that every single year, which feels just dishonest to me. Clickbait is bad. Wow, what a hot take. Maybe I'm throwing just a bunch of shade here for no real reason, as the youth say, but whatever, don't at me. Am I saying relevant things? Am I cool and hip yet? No, I'm not. Anyway, there we go. Once again, I've rambled far too much for what I felt like was a very shallow year for content from me, but I guess we just had a lot more to justify and talk about this year, huh? Let's all just try and move on and hope that things get better going forwards into 2021 then, eh? Thank you very much for watching. If you managed to stick it out this far, you're a real trooper apparently, and I hope to see you all over the coming years.